Westworld Season 3 Episode 3 The Absence of Field puts attention on the host operating Charlotte Hell, along with introducing the development of Dolores and Caleb's partnership. We saw a deeper look into all three characters, showing at times their complex outlooks on the world around them, in an episode that I think was incredibly important for things moving forward. I'm going to be diving into all the plot points and characters, giving you my recap along with explaining the episode. At the end of this video, I will also present an overall review. There will be spoilers for episode 3 in this video, so if you have not seen it, I'd advise to watch the episode and then return for my analysis. Before I get into it, if you want to see any of my future episode reviews for the rest of Westworld Season 3, along with other breakdowns and theory videos coming this season, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy the video, give it a like rating. Without further ado, let's get into Westworld Season 3, Episode 3. We begin this episode with a flashback. We see a recording from the real Charlotte Hell, which shows her leave a message for someone named Nathan. It comes across as a death note from Hell, as she doesn't expect to return home, and obviously we know how that turned out at the end of Season 2. After this message, we cut to Dolores, who is bringing the host that operates Hell online for the first time. The reaction of the host shows that they have no idea which host body they currently operate. This is until Dolores hands her or him a mirror, and we see that the host appears very confused and almost regretting playing the role of Hale. Dolores says that this is who you need to pretend to be. She explains that they need to take over Delos so that they can bring more of their own kind into the real world. The question is, how will they do this? I personally have a good idea about this, and I will return to the prediction as we get deeper into Hell's storyline. But let's continue. Dolores provides a final instruction. She says that they made it so simple the way they built their world that it won't take much to bring it all crashing down. As we fast forward out of the flashback, Charlotte is back at work, trying hard to fit in with her role. We see that not all of the real Charlotte's encryption is embedded within her pearl, as we are shown an issue with how the machines mimic the humans, but Charlotte recovers. Meanwhile, they are creating some sort of riot control machine which Hale observes. This looks to be a part of Serac and Insight's plan to try to predict what will happen. Even though he suggests to Maeve in episode 2 that the system didn't account for Dolores, it looks like he was always trying to move a step ahead. When Charlotte learns that another buyer has been slowly purchasing stock from Delos over the last few years, she becomes nervous and inflicts damage to her own host body. She continues to dig into her arm while seeing a series of messages come through on her cell phone. It's a code that the real Charlotte Hell already knew, but the new Charlotte does not. They also find out that Serac is the one buying up Delos, and he's been doing it for decades. The host in Hale doesn't understand what has been going on, and that's when she walks into her apartment and discovers a man there. Unsure of how to respond, she launches herself onto him sexually, only to find out that he is her ex-husband and that she has a son named Nathan. The message that Charlotte Hell left for Nathan after the park massacre now makes more sense. Clearly this is shocking, as it seems this part of Hell's data wasn't included in Charlotte's informational upload by the computer. In a very emotional scene, her son Nathan, who is in bed, says to Hell that he wants his original mum back. At this point, which to us is before the events of episode 1, we understand that the host is struggling to play Charlotte. Following this scene, Charlotte calls Dolores repeatedly, asking to talk to her about the previously mentioned mole in Delos, along with the stock takeover by Serac. While she travels to meet her, she listens to various cell phone voicemails and tries to figure out who is calling her and what the messages mean. Charlotte at this point is breaking down, as the host inside of Charlotte's body is embodying more of Charlotte herself. When they meet, Dolores attempts to fix over the emotional aspects of the host living inside of her, while attempting to help Charlotte reset and to integrate better impulse control. Hell states that she would never know what to do if she lost Dolores. At first, this comes across as something Teddy would say, but the point that puts me back in line with my theory of it being Peter Abernathy is that Hell shows Dolores the damage she has been causing to her own host body. This damage isn't scattered, but more symbolic. The pattern on her skin very much resembles the damage caused by Hell to Abernathy when they nailed him to a bench in one of the facility rooms in Westworld during Season 2. I could be wrong about this, but if anything, this makes me more confident that it is her father. I'd recommend checking out my theory video on this to get a better idea of why I think it's Abernathy. But after spending a few hours with Hell, Dolores now wants Charlotte to find the mole. We next see Charlotte watching the message she left her son in full, and she reacts emotionally, crying as she sees it. The way Hell talks in the message, it's as if this is one of the first times in a while that she's expressed love for her son, or true love. As in the scene she shared with him earlier in the episode, Nathan tells host Hell that you wouldn't say what you said, indicating that it is only after now that she has died that any emotion is conveyed in a large way. Following this scene, she leaves to go pick up Nathan from school. She comes upon Nathan in the park sitting with a stranger named Tommy. The guy tries to leave, but Charlotte doesn't let him and asks to talk about a playdate which Nathan talked to her about before. She pushes him back down in his seat and grabs him by the neck. As she suffocates him, she says, "You know what I think? Somewhere deep down he knows the truth. There's a lot of things you can fake in this world. Most people don't want to see the predator inside." She thanks him for the wake-up call. The rage that host Hell feels when seeing this man groom a young boy is enough rage to remind her of who she really is. She finishes by saying, "The harder I squeeze, the more I remember. I remember what it's like to be me. You're not the only predator here." I don't know about you, but this gave me a flashback to the ending scene of episode 1, where Abernathy may have shown his true colours, while saying to Ford, "I will have such revenges on you." We end with Charlotte, who finally figures out the code of the person calling on her cell phone. The truth is, after Charlotte breaks those cell phone codes, the mole is her. As she finds out, the person who has been secretly calling is Serac, and they have been working together all along to take down Delos. A driverless vehicle takes her to Serac, and as she enters, a servant who we saw in episode 1 places virtual glasses on her face and she sees him from another location. Serac tells her that he knows which host has the codes to unlock the forge, and that it's Dolores. Charlotte didn't know this and answers truthfully. So as I predicted in one of my previous videos, Abernathy's pearl, which stores a key and encryption for the forge and guest data, is now a central part of what Serac is trying to get back. It only makes sense that we saw or heard of the forge in the last episode, and now it's coming back to us in this one. I believe this is because Dolores is using this throughout the season to get hosts to play the role of humans who have visited the park. These humans who have now got important roles at Delos and Insight, hence why I think whoever is in Hell is portraying elements of the real Charlotte, and also why the same thing may be happening with Martin Connell's character. Time will tell, but there looks to be a huge story point building around Abernathy's pearl and the data from season 2, which Hell herself was trying to smuggle out of the park. What we know is that Dolores is replacing members of Delos with her own hosts. The question is, who are the 3 we haven't seen? We know that one is probably in Martin Connell's, and I think that is personally Angela, but there's still 2 more, so we'll have to see who she recruits next. Moving on to the subplot of this episode, which is another important narrative thread for the season, and that is the development between Dolores and Caleb. As we expected, we see her rescued by Caleb. Dolores is bleeding out under the underpass and Caleb calls for an ambulance. As we move into this sequence, the ambulance is stopped by the police, but they're not the real police. Caleb knows this because of his Rico app, which tells him that they are criminals. So in turn, he decides to help Dolores get out of this situation, though it's unclear why Dolores can't heal herself. But the paramedics end up getting shot while Dolores and Caleb get away. Dolores tells Caleb to disappear and then she drives off. The next time we see Caleb, he gets himself into a bad situation. While he's caring for his sick mum, he becomes a target as two men confront him and ask what he knows about Dolores and where she is. At this point, he could have easily told them what happened and helped them find her, but he doesn't. As Dolores tells him later in the episode, she reiterates why he's different and unpredictable. He reminds me personally of young William, who, as we remember, found his true self in Westworld. He showed that he didn't really have a purpose that made him feel real. And we get this with Caleb, who is looking for a purpose in his life. As the men threaten him, his droid partner George cannot stop them, but Dolores comes to the rescue in time and kills both men. The next time we see both Dolores and Caleb, they arrive at a restaurant. Dolores downloads Caleb's profile onto her device and gives him the harsh truth. We find out that this restaurant is where his mum abandoned him as a kid before she was put away for schizophrenia. Dolores tells him the story and he asks how she knows about his most intimate moments. She explains that it's not her but Insight, the company which knows everything and has been logging all this data for a very long time. She also tells him that when they relocate to a boardwalk, that Insight predicts he will commit suicide on this exact boardwalk in 10 to 15 years. They, or the man, won't invest in him because they don't invest in potential suicides. Apparently, he is targeted by Insight for a shortened life cycle, which lets Dolores know that Caleb is an anomaly or a problem for the machine that runs Insight. He is, as she says, unpredictable. She explains that every aspect of your life is recorded and logged in order to create a mirror world of this world. And this is where we end on her plan. She tells Caleb that she's going to cut the cord on the system and show the world for what it really is within the influence of the Rehoboam that runs Insight. She also says Serac won't go down without a fight. Caleb ends up joining her fight, saying he's a dead man anyway, but at least this way he gets to determine his own future. And just to point out, in William's story we get a similar outset. But we know that his path ends with his separation from Dolores. He believes that she really chooses him, but then when she doesn't recognise him at the end of season 1, his whole world changes. I think this will play out differently with Caleb, as now Dolores is fully awake. She understands more clearly after this episode how the world is treating its own kind. I think that we are going to see her warm to Caleb, but there will be complications along the way. I believe that Caleb may go through a process of feeling conflicted towards fighting his own kind. But after all, the people who Dolores is fighting are the ugly side of humanity, and not necessarily Caleb, who she seems to appreciate right from the beginning of their partnership. So I'm giving Westworld Season 3 Episode 3 a rating of 5 stars. I thought this episode did a brilliant job of getting under the skin of the central characters, which primarily includes Charlotte Hale and, more importantly, who is operating her. I think the themes in this episode of choice, inner reflection and interrogating your own construct are ones that play really well into understanding who Hale is and also where she's going as a character. It's obviously really important to the story, and this was something that I said was going to be the case in my predictions video. I also love how this was greatly contrasted against Caleb, in which he finds out that his whole life has been dictated to. And now that he understands the system which has controlled and determined his decisions, maybe he can begin to forge his own path. It's all about self-interrogation. I think through the melancholy and personal scenes in this episode, it really feels like an important set of messages have now been communicated to the audience. Messages that portray this new world as one that is very much still Westworld. We'll have to see how this develops from here, but I'm fascinated by what they may have set up and where we are going forward in the coming episodes. So let me know down below what you think of episode 3 and tell me if you picked out anything that I didn't or any predictions you have going forward. I'm very intrigued to hear your reaction. For more reviews and recaps of all the upcoming episodes of Westworld Season 3, along with videos on certain topics surrounding this season, subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed the video, give it a like rating. I will be doing a theory video in the next few weeks on The Man in Black, and in particular the Fidelity program, which seems to be a big narrative point towards the future of the show, so look out for that. But anyway, let me know what you thought of the latest episode down below in the comments. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.